Welcome back. This is AP U.S. History. We have been talking about the Revolutionary War. We just finished talking about the new Constitution, the Articles of Confederation that was adopted in 1777, and will serve as our Constitution until 1787. The French, after the Battle of Saratoga, are eager to become an American ally. They want to extract revenge from the British because of the War of 18 or the French and Indian War. They had been sending supplies secretly to America for fear the British might attack the French interest. But they're going to openly declare their allegiance to the colonies. Ben Franklin arranged this while he was in Paris. The Battle of Saratoga showed the French that the Americans could defeat the British. Up until that time, there was a lot of skepticism. This Franco-American alliance will last after the war is over, and eventually it will be nullified. France promised to recognize American independence, and both sides, under this Franco-American alliance, would not stop the war until they mutually agreed upon it. Battles in the West went fairly well for the Americans, and they will capture a number of British forts and send the British packing. The Indian allies to the British were anxious to drive out the white settlers out of the Ohio area. George Rogers Clark is going to be the hero of the West, and he helped put down the Indian uprisings against the Americans. Because of his action, the British are going to be forced to cede the whole Ohio area in the Treaty of Paris, and this is going to be certainly add to the landmass of America. The strategy of the British is they're going to fight the war in the South because they feel they have more loyalists there, and they believe that they can bring the war to an end. And so the loyalists are going to come to their side, as well as African Americans fighting the Continental Army, trying to drive them out and surrender. George Rogers Clark here, shown as one of the heroes in the West, and accepting the surrender of the British in the West. One of the things that the British were eyeing in the South is, of course, the tobacco and the rice growing area to help finance the war. They were hoping that African Americans would come on their side, and a number did. When the British finally left, about 15,000 went with them. The first British attack is going to be Savannah, Georgia. It will be commanded by General Clinton. By the end of 1779, Georgia was under British control. In 1780, Clinton captures Charleston, and which is in South Carolina. This is going to be the worst defeat for the Americans in the war. Several thousand Americans surrendered. So their strategy was to push north, go through the Carolinas, and then into Virginia and up through the colonies. Shortly after the British victory at Charleston, General Wallace will assume command of the forces in the South. He will win several victories and secure South Carolina. Nathaniel Greene will replace Gates as the general in the South for the Continental. So Clinton was a general for the British correction, not for the Americans. The Americans' prospects improved when Nathaniel Greene defeats the British at Kings Mountain and Cowpens. He's always on the move, pretty elusive. George or General Cornwallis can never seem to get it, and he pursues him. But eventually, Cornwallis will box himself in at Yorktown, and there he will offer up his sword. This is going to be the last decisive battle fought in the war. The war will go on, but this is the last major engagement between the Americans and the British. Cornwallis is trapped, no hope for evacuation because the French have bottled up the Chesapeake and won't allow the British ships to come in and resupply and evacuate. Eventually, he's going to be outnumbered and beaten, and he will send his adjutant out to give him his sword. There are a few minor attacks after 1781, but nothing of any significance. In 1783, a peace treaty will be signed in Paris, ending the conflict, and the Americans will gain their independence. The British formally recognize U.S. as an independent country. Of course, this is a humiliating defeat with Cornwallis at Yorktown in 1781. Some of the things that they got from the treaty, besides being recognized as an independent country, is that they will be able to take a large chunk of the West to the Mississippi River. This will extend from the Great Lakes down to the holdings in the southern part to the Spanish holdings in Florida. They'll be given fishing rights in Newfoundland. British promised not to take slaves from America, but 15,000 do leave. Americans agree to pay the Loyalists for the land taken from them, but this is never forthcoming. Pretty much neither side lived up to the agreement that they signed in 1783. Americans were bound to pay for the English debts they had incurred prior to the Revolutionary War, but that never happened. France signed on to the treaty, and it made it official. And so Loyalists will leave America and head for Canada, and that is why there are French speakers and English speakers in Canada today. America alone gained the most from the war. The British lost their colonies and territory. France, because of their actions, will bankrupt their country and eventually cause the death of their king. As far as the American society, during the war, about 250,000 American soldiers fought. The British occupied the major cities. All the states were involved in the war. The Quakers in Pennsylvania refused to fight because they were pacifists. Most of the fighting was done by the poorest Americans. African Americans fought on both sides. Native Americans who fought on the British side will suffer greatly because choosing the wrong side. This shows what the map looks like after the Treaty of Paris in 1783. Women managed the farms during the Revolutionary War. They also served in as nurses and cooks for the most part. Some did serve in combat, but on a limited basis. Changes in America after the war. Many of the conservative loyalists will flee, and the United States, soon to become the United States, will be a democratic republic. Slavery issue will still divide America, which will eventually lead to the Civil War in 1860. Quakers were the first to form anti-slavery societies against this. Quock Walker case in Massachusetts effectively ended all slavery in the New England area. Slavery was not allowed in the Ohio River in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. This is going to be later. Thousands of Southern slaves freed after the Revolution, yet it remained strong in the South. Even though we are a new republic, women do not have the right to vote. They are still second-class citizens. Republican motherhood is a term that you need to know, and this was the idea that women were to raise children to be good citizens in the republic, law-abiding people, paying their taxes. And we'll stop there.